our planet, and Wealth Migrate is just one of those companies that I truly have a lot of faith in that will make a difference. And then I also want to get to Dolf. Dolf does not need a lot of introduction. He's the author of, sorry, I just quickly want to get my, I'm trying to get my camera open here. Dolf, can you see me?
I'm not right now. I can see the poll screen. Now I can see you. Yes,
okay.
Very good.
I just want to quickly get there. So, okay, so I just want to do that. So Dolf is the author of Real Estate Riches, which I think everybody that's invested or interested in real estate has at some point of their life read this book. You've written since about, I think, 15 other books on the topic. You speak all over the world. I know you speak about 6 languages, which is very impressive. You've created software, which I want to talk about a little bit later, about your software on the real estate management system, you know, and I think the REMS and the REMS and the REAP. So I want to talk about that later so people can understand what all it is that you're doing. But tonight we're going to really talk about more the women and wealth aspects. And we're going to talk about differently than men. How do women and men do it together? Or just so people can understand where their roles fit in, and that it's okay for women to think about wealth, talk about wealth, and be wealthy. So the first question I want to pose to you is, are women smarter investors? I think there were some polls or some research done where to find that where women run certain funds, the funds are performing better. Women are running companies or diverse companies with a lot of leaders, women, those companies are performing better. We see the latest stats that came out of the States is that about currently 50% of America's wealth is managed and controlled by women, and in the next 4 years, by 2020, they reckon 75% of the money in America will be controlled by women. Talk to us about your perception of women and money. Are women really better with money, and if so, why?
All right, well, a flood of ideas come to me, Hilda, when you say that. If we've gone from 50% of the world's wealth being controlled by women, and now it's 75%, if that trend follows, then before long they'll control 100%, and we men may apply for jobs with women because that's the trend. Look, you mentioned some statistics. I absolutely agree with the statistics that those mutual funds and companies that are run by women statistically tend to do better than those run by men. But that of itself doesn't prove that women are smarter than men. It could be that the sorts of companies that have a broad enough perception of the world to enable women to rise to the top, they have other reasons which also make those companies do very well. But I think when we talk about individual women, it is incumbent upon them to actually learn about investing for their own sake and for their family's sake. One of the reasons why women tend to control more wealth than men is that, again, statistically, women outlive men. They live on average 5 to 9 years longer than men in most of the member nations of the OECD, the major Western nations in the world. So for that reason alone, a woman who always listens to her husband, read the thought, and does what he says, or doesn't even know about the investments, and if she outlives him, statistically she will, she'll end up what to do. So I think the sooner women get to understand investments, the better. And I think we've also got a new generation of people going through. For me, I would much rather be with someone who's actively interested in investments and can contribute and come up with ideas and suggestions than if, you know, well, no, I'll do my tasks and you do your tasks, and that includes investing. But I do want to highlight a little bit about where I think women have a huge advantage over men. And it comes to something that is not just statistical, but this has been shown in test after test after test. And to get to that point, I want to pose a question that I often pose in front of a live audience. So the last time I did this, I had about 1,200 people in the room, a mixture of men and women. And I said to them, imagine a couple is driving in a car. They've got a rental car, they're in a strange place, and they've got a map on the back seat that the rental car company gave to them. And they're driving along, and suddenly it dawns on them that they are somewhat lost. And imagine that they agree to pull over on the side of the road to consult the map. And so I say, imagine firstly if the man is driving and they pull the car over to the side of the road, what is the first thing that the man will do before looking at the map? And I don't have to give the answer. From an audience of 1,000+ people, you'll always get someone say, he turns down the radio. Yes, the man in general will turn down the radio because we men are particularly hopeless at multitasking. We can't listen to a song on the radio and look at a map at the same time, for heaven's sakes. Whereas you women have this huge advantage over us. You can multitask. I always say a woman can be on the phone, cooking breakfast for a family, deciding what to make for lunch, making a signal to the postman to just leave the package at the door, and telling one of the kids to put their socks on. They can do that all at once. A man probably can't.
Women. I'm one of those.
Yes. Well, most women are. They're natural at this. And most men are not. If they can manage to do all those tasks at once, then the quality of each task diminishes as another task is added. So why is that relevant? In the day and age where a person's sole function was to make an investment decision, yes, men can do that pretty well because they can focus on it. But in this day and age, this new modern age, men also have to drop kids off at school and pick up the dry cleaning and run the errands and let the plumbers in. And in that context, women can handle the extra task of making an investment decision so much better than men can. That is the first point. On the other hand, let's assume the woman was driving and they pull off the side of the road to consult the map. And I'll say to an audience, what's the first thing that a woman does? And in this case, the women look at each other as if to say, what do we do? But the men all know. And the men say, she orients the map so that it's pointing in the same direction that the car is facing. And it's true. And when you mention this, everyone erupts with laughter because they can all relate to it. And it's true. Men have great spatial capacity to visualize things, so they don't need to orient the map in a certain way, but a woman needs the map pointed in the same way or she gets lost. And imagine they decide the map's no good and they discard it and they ask a local, could you please tell me how to get to such and such a place? If the guy says, listen, you're headed in the wrong direction, make a U-turn, go about 400 yards, take the second left, and then it's the third right, you'll be 100 meters away. A man understands that. He doesn't need to hear it again. He turns the car around and he drives there. Whereas the woman would stare at this local as if he's speaking another language, and indeed, to her, he is speaking another language. She can't relate to that. She needs to hear, listen, you're going in the wrong direction, turn the car around and keep driving till you get to a big green barn, and there you'll turn left. You know it's left because it's going uphill. You'll be facing the sun's setting, and when you get to whatever, the pig farm, you turn right there, and you'll be going downhill, and it's about 200 yards. And she'll get that, and she'll go there. Now, she'll ask for confirmation. But women are far more visual. They need more detail. When they're looking at investing, Hilda, they will ask more details. They don't have this arrogance to assume, oh, I know how to do that. You don't need to teach me. I know investing. How do you think I got to where I am? That's a very male-dominant attitude. Women are far more willing to learn, willing to admit they don't know things, willing to find out what they need to know to get where they're going. And for all those reasons, they tend to make quick learners and excellent investors.
Do you say women are asking questions? Do you think women are comfortable? Because most of the world of finance, banking, investing, real estate is pretty male dominated. We don't see a lot of women there. So as you're now talking, I'm just wondering do women really want to ask or appear like they don't know in this male-dominated industries? What do you think? Because sometimes I'm not so sure.
You know, Hilda, I think it's changing very rapidly. And unfortunately, I've got a few decades behind me. I wish I didn't. I wish I could say I was 21 and I don't know the answer to that. But in my decades, I've experienced a little microcosm called Japan, where I think what's happening there is an accelerated version of what's happening in the world. When I started going to Japan, and I was blessed as a kid to learn the language, so I got sort of the inside scoop when I was there. Japanese women were very much, they weren't considered secondary citizens. It's something that's difficult to understand if you don't understand the culture. But it was normal for a woman to walk a few steps behind her husband, not because she was lesser, but that's just culturally the way it was done. If they had guests for dinner, the woman wouldn't eat with everyone else. She would wait till everyone, including the kids, had finished, and then she'd eat. There was not a single female member of the Diet. The Diet is the name of their parliament, of their Congress or parliament. It didn't exist. It was such a male-dominated environment. And I was bringing foreign companies to Japan. Once I made the mistake, so to speak, of bringing one that was headed by a woman, and she was kind of shunned. And if we can fast forward a mere 30 years now, as I said, in Japan, it's been compressed in time. In 30 years, they've now got women members of Diet. Women have taken on their roles and responsibilities in other parts of the world. They are far more dominant now in the things they do. They're more equals. They eat with the rest of the family. And now when I bring a company headed by a woman, because everyone wants to show that they work well with women. So I think that's a very sped up version of what's happening in the rest of the world. All these thoughts we have about I dare say it, but a woman's place is in the home and nonsense like that, they are diminishing, and now people are taken on their merit. And in that sense, yes, we've still got this latent buildup of men dominating the industry. But I think as the next few generations come through, the millennials and the Y generation, everything, I think that's going to be more balanced.
Yeah, I think if you look at the youngsters, for them, that don't understand why there's different roles or
Right.
in the world, because everybody has to do their bit. So if we look at investment, what type of things are women typically investing in your experience? How do women typically prefer to make their money versus men in the rest of the world? And probably see if it's the same example in South Africa.
Right. I think it might be appropriate, Hilda, if I just give a little bit of background to my involvement with women in the investing realm, because otherwise it would just be the opinion of one guy, and, an opinion is just an opinion. But just to give it some perspective, I've worked with a number of women's groups all over the world. In Australia, for instance, I've worked with a group called Wildly Wealthy Women. In fact, they used to run weekend events called the Wildly Wealthy Women's Wicked Weekends. And it was all focused on investing. They had an all-female cast of instructors and teachers. I was the sole exception. Once I couldn't make it to Melbourne. They had 1,200 people in the room. They beamed me in by video, but they turned the video off because they wanted me to be anonymous. But when they heard my voice, everyone roared with laughter, saying, "We know who it is, it's Dolf." So anyway, that's in Australia. Here in the United States, I work with the Women's Information Network. That is a huge organization. They've got a database of over 10.3 million that's active. They've got more that is not so active. And I've worked with women's groups in Italy. So when I give my answers, Hilda, it is based on my experience in working with these groups as well as what I see in the field. And that is that women, I think, are quicker to realize that the stock market, to some extent, is a little bit of a gamble. And let's face it, when you look at mutual funds, about half of them do better than average and the other half do worse than average. That get an average, and everyone's trying to beat the average. But how do you beat the average? It's very difficult to have a theory or a policy that works, no matter how smart you are, no matter what your gender is. But when it comes to other investments, and one that I'm particularly fond of, and one that Wealth Migrate is all about, and that is real estate, it is possible to develop theories and to exercise your theories to figure out ways of beating the average. In fact, a lot of my books are written on just that topic. And it's for that reason that I've noticed that women in these women's groups and women who attend my events, they are quick to get this and they're quick to seize at it. So to answer your question, women are particularly good at real estate investing because they know that they can have a plan, and if they follow that plan, they've got a good chance of beating the average. It's one of the tenets of my teachings is how do you beat the average in a way that you couldn't even begin to explore to do in the stock market or futures contracts or options contracts. Now, I'm not saying there are not good options teachers out there and that. George Soros, for instance, has made more in currency transactions in one day than I will in 5 lifetimes. And the same with Warren Buffett. He's made more on the stock market in one day. But I'm saying if we take 1,000 women on average and teach them everything that Warren Buffett knows, and take another 1,000 women on average and teach them everything that George Soros knows, and then take a third 1,000, Hilda, and teach them everything you and I know on real estate, my contention is that our 1,000 will probably outperform the other 2,000, not because we're better teachers, but because real estate lends itself better to beating the average. And I think women seize on this point more so than men. I've had more women say to me, you know, after 5 years of playing around with everything, I'm now going to focus on real estate. Whereas men tend to think they can conquer every field and they'll do real estate and futures and options. And so I think, and it's another big point, women don't have as big an ego issue as men do, on average in general, and there are many exceptions, but on average. And I think that having no ego serves you very well in your real estate investing.
So do you find women in your courses that you do you do courses only for women or in only mixed groups, or when you do your trainings in real estate investing, do you do women only groups only, or?
Well, it's an interesting question because I never thought I'd ever do a women's only group. And it was a bunch of women who came to me and said, Dolf, would you consider doing a women's only event? And I remember being somewhat taken aback, and I said, well, that's an interesting proposition. Do you mind sharing with me why? And they said, well, two reasons. A minor reason is that whenever we go to an event, especially if it's a high-priced event, no matter whether we're single or married, the men at that event, no matter whether they're single or married, figure out a way of hitting on us. And we figured that by having a women's-only event, that would be eliminated. I said, okay. And they said, but, you know, in all honesty, that is the lesser reason. The main reason is we know a little bit about you, and we figured that if it were a women's-only event, you would treat the topics slightly differently and even introduce different topics, and we want the benefit of that. And I thought, wow, that's a good point. So I started doing it, and to my own surprise, a little bit surprised that I was, they went extraordinarily well. And I'd put my neck out and say that we tend to have more success on average at a women's only event than at a mixed gender event, for all the reasons I've started to suggest. There's no ego, they can focus, they can multitask better. You know, if we're interrupted in exercise because of lunch or there's a baby crying or something, that doesn't faze them. Whereas the men are likely to say, well, can we start again? We had to stop for lunch. You know? I'm simplifying it a bit, but there's a large element of truth to this, Hilda. So yes, I've done a lot of women's only events, and you know.
So do women then ask different questions, or do they learn different in a different way than what men would learn
They
about
ask
these?
different questions. Men tend to challenge your answer more, and I don't mind my answers being challenged at all. You can challenge them right now. And by the way, everyone listening, if you want to pose questions, feel free to type them. You've probably got a slot on your screen. It's usually on the right-hand side. I'll keep an eye on it. And I see there are none at yet, but if you've got a question, feel free to ask. So it's not that I mind being challenged, but I think men challenge a question because if they hear something and it doesn't quite fit their mold of how they think the way the world works, then they'll challenge you on it, try and give their impression, rather than saying, wow, I didn't know that. I'll check it out, but that's interesting. Women are far more accepting like that, and therefore they learn faster.
Okay. And when women invest in real estate, are there specific sort of niche categories, like only residential, or what would they typically like to invest in? And I'm going to run a poll for everyone. If you're really interested in investing in real estate, let us know. And then Dolf visits South Africa numerous times a year. And if you want us to put something together for women, then let us complete this poll, and then we can, you know, we'll put something together depending on obviously on your schedule, Dolf. But we can. So while we're running this poll, if the woman that's interested in investing in real estate, are there certain subsectors in real estate that they're more keen on investing?
Well, there are, but I don't think it's a sector that they're more keen on because they're women. But I will explain in a moment how, being women, they make better decisions on what to invest in. Let me explain. So most people, when they get into real estate, they don't get started with industrial properties or with an office tower or with a retail chain. Most people get started in residential property for a myriad of reasons which I endorse, and I think they're very good. We all know what constitutes a house. If you look at a house and there's no front door, or there's no kitchen, or there's no roof, all of us will say, hang on a minute, there's no front door, what's wrong with this place? Whereas if I were to show most people an industrial property or a commercial property, they wouldn't know where to begin to look for what's missing. They just wouldn't know yet. So I think it's very natural that people get started in residential. But here's why women have an advantage when it comes to investing in residential properties. It is well known that if you're going to remodel a home to rent out to the public, that you've got to cater to the woman of the household, because more often than not, she's the one who's going to say, yes, honey, I like this house, we're doing this one, as opposed to the husband. So if you have a budget where you can remodel only one of the following rooms, either the master bedroom or the living room or the kitchen, you would be smartest to remodel the kitchen, because as much as it might be a popular thing for me to say on this call, women on average still spend more time in the kitchen, not in my house, but still spend more time in the kitchen than men do. So if the kitchen is really good and efficient, that's going to sway them and they'll say, yes, I like this place. So if we can accept that for a moment, that women have a disproportionately large decision-making say in which house gets rented. On that basis, when a woman investor is looking at investing in real estate, she is more likely to find and ferret out and close or buy a property that is well suited to the woman of the household. Because she even thinks about it. My gosh, this kitchen is so well positioned. It has the garbage disposal system. It's got a modern dishwasher. It's got the dual sink, which comes in really handy. A guy doesn't even know that. He's more concerned about, is there a leak in the roof and does the toilet flush? Hey, by the way, if the toilet doesn't flush, it doesn't take much to get that fixed. One call to a plumber and, you know, 1,000 rand or whatever, and it's done. But a kitchen that doesn't have the dual sinks and doesn't have the dishwasher, which is going to condemn the woman to washing dishes by hand every night because her husband doesn't help her, the woman's going to notice that. So if you see where I'm coming from, women have this natural ability to pick properties that are better suited to the decision maker in any household as to which property to rent. I think it's a great advantage.
But just to, if I can interrupt you there, what I heard a very interesting observation now is where women would look at the kitchen and certain things, men would look at the leaking roof or toilets flushing, which is very important to look at. If you don't want to have to replace plumbing and wiring in the roof. So again, that I rest my case almost if we do it together, if men and women do it together, you'll probably find, you will look at everything, you'll get a full round picture. And that's the same as in business, where men and women do it together. Women look at different aspects, men look at different aspects, and together you look at all the aspects. So where I think when women, men, then partner in your real estate endeavor or you're investing, whether it's we do it as a family or we do it as a business or as a company, you'll probably find that people were looking at different things based on what they bring to the table naturally. Am I right?
You are so right. And it's no coincidence. I don't stage where I'm sitting to suit it. You'll see the sign up behind me. Oh, I can't even point it. It says family. It's all about family. Couples that work together tend to do much better. One of my favorite sayings in the world is by the French author Albert Camus. And he says, do not walk ahead of me, for I will not follow. And do not walk behind me, for I will not lead. But walk beside me and be my friend. And that works on a personal relationship basis, and it works on a business basis, and it works on an investing in real estate basis. Couples that work together tend to do exceptionally better than those who think, oh, I'll show my spouse how good I can be, or more sinisterly, I'll show her how deficient she is. You know, that's not a good long-term strategy.
That's you lose there right from the start if that's the thinking you're going into. You wouldn't go into a business like that, so why going into investing? You know, with that mindset.
Right. In fact,
Dolf,
when we run events, just a quick aside, we encourage both sides of a couple, if they're blessed to be in a relationship, to come along, because couples that learn together do so much better. So we offer them incentives and discounts. They're just better students. It's great.
That's awesome. We have had an overwhelming response to women wanting to learn about real estate, and seems like, and I'm going to ask Wealth Migrate to listen to this and maybe create some women events. And would you be willing to teach us then how to invest in real estate as a group of women, whoever might be interested to attend?
Oh, that would be my pleasure, absolutely. And you know, I relish them, and I just don't want to give anyone the wrong impression, obviously, but I relish teaching women's only events because they are such keen students. There's no ego involved. And it just makes it for a very rich learning environment. And it's not that I don't like the mixed gender events or men only event, but no, I would jump at the opportunity. I think it's a great idea. Absolutely.
So I've got a question here from, I can't see who posed the question. It says, hi, Dolf and Hilda. How do women get a mortgage without their husbands knowing about this? Okay. I feel some women are married to men who don't want them to be self-sufficient. What do you do in this case? Okay, so this is now a sort of difficult question. Have you had this where women start investing on the side without their partners or their husbands knowing it? And how, I know, it's like a difficult,
Oh, Hilda, listen, most questions I get posed on interviews and radio shows, and I've heard them, a dozen times before. I'd never had this question before. And my initial reaction, and I have to be honest, because if I'm not true to myself, then I'm not doing my job. But my initial reaction when I hear, how do I get a mortgage without my husband knowing about it, is that you're in the wrong relationship, because you shouldn't want to be in a relationship where if your husband were to find out, he would reprimand you in some way instead of saying, baby, thank you so much for focusing on looking after our future financial well-being. And so it's a tricky one, because it's not like, how do I go to the shop and sneak an ice cream into my mouth without him knowing? This is a recorded document. And here in the States, you can go online and just about see who's got a mortgage on any property and who owns any property. So that is risky ground. And I don't want to suggest anything that's going to get people in trouble, or, I don't want to hear later, well, I ended up being handed a divorce proceeding document because I took some advice of to sneakily get a mortgage. And that's a tricky one, Hilda.
yeah.
That I would really say you've got to bring your partner on board and talk to him about the relative merits of not spending money on yet another car, which you only replaced 2 years ago and the value is going to go down, but spending it on an investment that's going to go up in value.
You're 100% correct, and I think it is worrisome that you need to do something, or your husband wouldn't let you do or be successful because of his own ego. I've got another, I don't know if it's a statement or a question, that says many women, this lady knows she's in a great relationship, but many women she knows are in their 40s in the divorce stage, and they only get themselves going in where they have to start. Is there any advice you can give for someone that's probably in their 40s getting divorced, that has to start out? Is it too late? Is there an ideal age to start investing? Let's talk about that, because you get your different phases. Sorry, and I know I talk a lot now, but women either are getting married later in life. That's why I'm saying every woman should know about investing in money and all of these topics. Firstly, you're getting married later. If you get married, only 30% of marriages survives. So your chances are that 70%, and if you're lucky to be the 30% that remains married throughout your life, chances are your husband might die before you, and you're going to outlive your husband. So at some point of your life, you're going to need to have the tools to cope financially or to make these decisions. But do you have any insight or any experience in this, women starting forced through divorce or anything later in their life that they have to start?
Well, sure, because they frequently come to me at that point. And look, one of the things that really bugs me about our entire education system in the Western world is most kids in the West go through 12 years of secondary education, learning geometry and calculus and history and all kinds of boring things that you can look up online these days. Why memorize them? And we don't spend 1 hour, Hilda, on learning about financial literacy and how to balance a checkbook and what the value of passive income is. Our whole education system is based on giving us skills so that we can swap time for money. And yet true financial freedom is when you can wake up in the morning and there's more money in your bank account than when you went to sleep the night before. That is a feeling that when you first experience it, oh my gosh, it's like life becomes so exciting. And we don't teach that. So the ideal age to start learning about this is 5 or 6, when you start to get the concept of money. Well, most people don't do that. The second best age to start learning about it is 5 years before today, because you'd be up and running. But even if you're 46 years old and you're freshly divorced and the world looks gloomy because you're no doubt thinking, who could possibly be interested in me now that my looks are starting to fade and this and that? There's no time like the present. There's no time, because it's better to start at 46 than at 56, and better at 56 than at 66. And even if you're 66 and you're blessed with another 25 or 30 years, think of how your life could be different if you made just one or two investments compared with if you just became a consumer. So there's no time like the present, and that's why I admonish everyone, start to learn about this. Figure out why passive income is so good. And, you know, we can't start young enough. I don't know if we've got time, but my daughter, she was about 5 at the time. She got it in her head that she wanted one of those gumball machines. That's a big machine with lots of gumballs, and you put a coin in.
At the age of 5, one of them.
Yeah. So apparently I said, well, if ever we come across one that's for sale, I might get it for you. So anyway, we're driving through town. There's an open house. It's at the high end of the market. As I often do, I look at open homes. You might get architectural ideas or find a gem or find a bargain. So I said, come on, we're going to stop and look. And this 5-year-old kid said, what, another house? You know, I said, yes, it'll be fun. So we go and look there, and I'm looking around, she's looking. She comes running to me, she says, Dad, there's a gumball machine for sale.
So you bought the house.
I say to her, oh my gosh, I say, you've got a gumball machine for sale. And he said, where's your accent from? I said, I don't have an accent. You have an American accent. And I said, listen, the gumball machine, how much? And he said, what do you do? I said, I'm in real estate. He said, come back tomorrow. I'll have some coffee. We'll talk real estate. So we turn up again the following, and he's got this gumball machine wrapped with a bow around it. And he gave it to my daughter. Well, she's over the moon, of course. And we loaded in the car, which wasn't easy because it barely fit in the car. But as we're driving home, I said to her, I said, well, sweetheart, you've got 3 options now. She said, how do you mean? I said, well, it's your gumball machine. We could fill it with gumballs, and you could have 2 or 3 a day, and I'm sure the dentist would be happy. And she was looking as if to say, well, that's the whole point of this machine, isn't it? She said, what are the other 2 options then? I said, well, the second option is you could put it on eBay and sell it, and he gave it to you, so all the proceeds would be yours. And she said, but Dad, I've always wanted a gumball machine. Don't make me sell it. And she said, what's the third option? I said, well, you and I could go and find a place, a playground or something where we can install it, and then every week we'd go there and top up the gumball machines that had been bought, and we'd take the money and share some with the owner of that venue where it's placed, and that would be your first sort of passive income. And she looked at me and she said, I still like option 1, but I guess you're saying I should really go for option 3. And my point is, Hilda, this got her at the age of 5 to start thinking at the very least about passive income. And if more people did this, if school did this, if he had 1 hour a week at school for 12 years, can you imagine how many hundreds of hours kids would have learned about earning income? We'd all be better investors. Our nation's economies would be better. That's my belief. So part of my passion, and it's through great events like this, and thank you, by the way, for inviting me, Hilda, but part of my passion is to get this information out there, to get people to start thinking about it. And for the women listening, not just to say, how can I be a better investor, but what can I do to impart some of this to my kids? And if we achieve that, even if it's just with 1 family today, Hilda, it'll be time well spent.
And you know, children learn through what they see their parents do, not what their parents tell them. And that's why it's imperative that parents need to know these things, and especially mothers, because mothers are very often more the involved one with their kids. And you can't tell your kids go and make passive income or create investments when you don't do it yourself. Then it's not real, because children will see how you behave, and then naturally they will then follow, in my opinion, or what I'm seeing. So, and that's why it is important for families to do this together for the future generations. Otherwise, our future generations are not going to be any better off or know anything more. So, Dolf, just talk to us about your real estate, your software that you develop. Can everybody use it? What is it about? Does it make investing in real estate easier?
I think it makes the decision-making process as to whether I should buy this property or not much easier. So to give that some background, most people don't know, my background is actually in technology. So when I started investing in real estate, I couldn't find any software that was tailored to me. Like, is it a good investment? Not in general, but is it a good investment for me? Because, Hilda, everyone has different amounts of cash in the bank, different credit worthiness, different risk aversions. So a property that's a really great deal for you may not necessarily be a great deal for me, and vice versa. One that's great for me may not suit you. So I wanted software that would figure out, is this a good investment for this particular investor? And so we started, those of you old enough to know, we developed it first for DOS, the operating system that Microsoft used before they even had Windows.
Wow.
And then we evolved it on, and it's been through multiple iterations. But now it's become almost by default the world dominant software used by banks and valuers or appraisers and insurance companies and real estate agents and investors. And what you do is you have one screen where you input all the data, and the first time you see it, it's a bit daunting, but it's just all the relevant data. What's the purchase price and what's the market value? What's the rental income, and is it rental per week or per month or per year? What's the vacancy rate, etc., etc. Just all the standard things you'd expect. And then it works its algorithms on those numbers, and it also asks you for your income level, and it knows the marginal tax rate in your country at that income level, etc., etc. And it works out how good an investment it is. Now, it can't give you an absolute answer. That depends on all kinds of extraneous factors. But where it becomes interesting is, say that you've got a choice, Hilda, between two properties. You can't afford to buy both. You can only afford to buy one. One is for, 1.5 million rand, and it's got income of 24,000 a week, but it's got expenses of 3,000 a week. And the other one is for only 1.2 million rand, but the income is not proportionate. It's a bit less than what, but expenses are. Which one is better? And for most people to work that out without the software, they just don't know. Guessing. And 50% of the time, they make the wrong decision. So as I always say, if this software could help you just make one great investment decision, or more particularly, if it could help you avoid buying just one lemon, what's it worth? And that's the idea behind the software. It's called REAP, R-E-A-P. It's an acronym for Real Estate Acquisition Program. That's its sole function. Should I acquire it or not? Once you've dismissed it, you'll never need to use the software again on that property. And even if you buy it, you'll never need to use the software again on that property. If you need software to help manage it, that's a different program. The sole function of the software is, should I buy it or should I not buy it? And I think that's why it's met with such a lot of success, because it really streamlines that process. And just to add one more thing, I hope people are still following this, but it's got one feature which is also really useful, which I use most often, and that's a sensitivity analysis, by which I mean, how sensitive is this property to a change in the rental level? If you're currently getting 1,200 units, euros or dollars or whatever, and it goes down to 1,000, how will that affect your bottom line? And some properties are really sensitive to that, and others aren't. And aren't you more powerful to know if your property is sensitive to a change in the mortgage interest rate, or the rental level, or the proportion of cash that you're forced to put in? So it's just a very useful tool. And once you know how to use it, which takes about an hour, you can put the details of a new property in about 60 seconds flat, and you'll know for 90% whether it's a good deal or not. For the remaining 10%, you still have to inspect the property and make sure that the zoning enables what is being done there, all those other things.
So can this be used in any country, or is it mainly for America developed, or can you use it in South Africa?
Oh, absolutely. We have developed it so that it can be used in any country. So as a default, the software comes with 5 countries pre-installed, and that means that if you select, say, the United States or Canada or Australia, then it puts in the tax scales that are relevant right now in those countries, and it puts in the sales commission rates, and it puts in all the other details that are relevant. In Australia, for instance, they have stamp duty. So if you select Australia as the country, it introduces stamp duty in the words, but if you select another country, the words don't even appear. But if your country is not featured, you can add as many countries as you like. So you'd add South Africa and put in the marginal tax rates for South Africa, all their breakpoints. You put in the sales commissions, and depending on how your computer's set up, it even uses the local currency symbol, the dollar sign or the euro sign, or the capital R for Rand, if you choose to have that set up that way.
And where do people get access? Is it on the Wealth Migrate platform? Where can people have access to it?
That could well be. I think there might be access to it there. We sometimes make it available when we do events. I could demonstrate it. But it's also available from my own website, which is simply dolfderoos.com. And you can buy a physical copy or get it electronically. But it's been credited as being the tool that has made more judicious investment decisions than any other tool that individual investors can use.
And for managing your property, now people are now really confident, they buy, they invest. Is property management difficult? Do you obviously invest yourself, or do you recommend people to rather outsource managing the property? And I would imagine that depends on where the property is in relation to your own location.
Yes, I mean, if you're based in Johannesburg and you buy a property in Lagos, I wouldn't recommend managing it yourself. You don't want to fly up there to fix a leaking tap or something. Um, Here's another thought. When you buy a property, it's possible to manage it yourself. You buy a second property, you can manage that as well. But once you get to property number 20, it becomes a full-time job managing them all. So the question I'd pose is, do you want to keep ownership of your 20 properties and have a full-time job managing them? Or do you want to give a small proportion of your revenue, typically 5 to 8% of the rent roll, to a property manager and set yourself free to find the next 20? And most people will realize that buying the next 20 is a far smarter choice, although a lot of people get caught up in managing it themselves because they can do it better than the next person. So let's assume that you want to end up with property managers. I would still recommend that for your first 2 or 3 properties, you do the management yourself. Because if you start off with a property manager, you won't know what to look for in a property manager. When they say, oh, we've had an expense here, we've had to do this, and we've had to do that, you don't know if it's true or not. But if you've got 2 or 3 years under your belt of having managed the property yourself, you'll know which questions to ask to even interview 3 candidate property management companies. So yes, you can manage it yourself initially. And again, there's software to do that. There are many packages available. We have one. It doesn't sell nearly as many copies as our REIT because lots of people have reason to analyze a property, but not everyone has a reason to have software to manage it. So, but you shouldn't do the management yourself. You want to buy more properties long term.
So you want to be the investor, not the doer, and don't get trapped into that. Dolf, we got a couple more minutes left. Anything I want to move up to sort of starting to wrap up and summarize? Anything else on investing and specifically real estate and any other opportunities that you would want to share with people?
Well, just that I honestly think, because people ask me all the time, you know, I'm divorced, I'm broke, I'm just starting out, or I've got R1 million in the bank, what should I do? And whichever way I look at it, I find the people who end up being the most successful, who end up having more income than their modest expenditures, they're the ones who did it through real estate. You know, of all the people I know who are fabulously wealthy, most of them, in my experience, have done it through real estate. There are the odd ones who do it through some kind of startup, but I always say for every Facebook that there is, for every Airbnb concept, there are 1,000 also-rans who struggle and try but don't succeed. Whereas just about everyone who dabbles in real estate, even if they just buy one property, they tend to do very well. And I know many people who bought a property 10, 20 years ago, and they still have it, and they say, oh my gosh, it's the best thing I ever did. It's what enables me to have a holiday every year, and I buy a new car every 4 years because of this property. If only I'd bought a second one, let alone 10. So I just want to hammer that point that my background was in high-tech electronics. I could have had a career in that field. I could have done many things, but I focused on the thing that I'm most passionate about and that I think can set more people free than anything else. Disclaimer, there are the George Soroses and the Warren Buffetts and a myriad of other people who've done similar great things. But for the masses, I think real estate offers a massive, massive advantage.
But I also want to add to that, even if you are making your money in another business, what we see most of the wealthy people, they take the money they make inside their business and they put that into real estate in any event. So either they make their money maybe elsewhere, but they keep it in real estate. Some people make their money in real estate and then grow their portfolio. So if you just want to mimic the behavior of the really wealthy people, you will have assets in real estate. You will have investments in real estate. That's
Right.
just what people do with money, and the easiest way of making money is copy what other people are already doing
Right.
successfully.
No, we say success leaves clues. So look at what successful people are doing. Don't necessarily listen to what your cousin is telling you to do. oh, you should get into oyster farming or something. See what successful people are doing, and then
Exactly.
see what you can, and also figure out what are your chances of success. I mean, I mentioned oyster farmer. I happen to know an oyster farmer who does extraordinarily well at it. But I know other oyster farmers who have yet to turn their first dollar.
Mm.
So what works well on average?
And yeah, and what works well for you? What can you do well within, I would imagine, your sense of experience and knowledge?
Right. Well, and to
Yeah.
give that another perspective, I spent 8 years at university getting a PhD in electrical engineering. And Hilda, everything I learned has been made redundant by new technology. Whereas to learn all you need to know to be a reasonably good real estate investor, you don't need to invest 8 years. You don't even need to invest 8 months. You probably don't need to read 8 books. Just read a few books, go out there and look at it, join a few local real estate investors associations, come to the Wealth Migrate meetings on real estate, learn what you can and get started, or even participate in some of the Wealth Migrate offerings. And you can be up and running in no time. And that's what excites me about it. It is relatively easy to learn.
I think to just put it in perspective, the up and running in no time through the Wealth Migrate in the co-investing with other people takes the pain almost out of finding the deals and vetting the deals, and you can really just learn from them and invest your money and start making money and earning money on those investments. So it's a brilliant platform to start investing in real estate.
Right.
In
And you
other
don't need to worry about managers and management fees and all that. It's all eliminated. Mm.
Exactly. So I want to, as everybody know, through the Women's Month, I give my 5 tips for what I believe is a successful life, and I asked Dolf for his 5 tips. I want to move on to that, and then wrapping up, Dolf. I can't believe an hour is nearly over. So for my 5 things that I believe, my 5 tips of creating your success in your life is understanding your definition of success and spending the time on writing that down, what your definition is. And then you can stop comparing yourself with someone else, and you know you're on your path achieving your goals. And it just takes so much stress out from trying to keep up with the Joneses. Is I'm living my purpose and I'm creating and achieving the stuff that that I set out to create. Stop making excuses. A lot of people, you get trapped in your stories of why you can't achieve things. So catch yourself in that moment of your excuses and start becoming aware of it. Find your purpose. Oprah Winfrey says this is the first thing in your life that you have to do. And if you don't have your purpose of why you're on this planet, then stop everything you do and spend your time finding your purpose. Gratitude. Be grateful for everything that you have, and then give back. What you give, so what you give, you shall reap. And just give back. If you were the lucky one that received talents or gifts, share those with the world. Dolf, that's my 5 things. Your 5 things. We had to summarize a little bit, but I would like you to elaborate what you mean by your 5 things and.
Oh, sure, to be my pleasure. You know, Hilda, I hear that when people are really old in their 90s, they don't look back on their lives and regret the things that they did that they shouldn't have done. They regret the things they didn't do that they could have done. So be daring, go out there and try things. Be willing to make mistakes. I am where I am, Hilda, because I've been willing to make a lot of mistakes. And I've made plenty of mistakes, but you learn from mistakes. In fact, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. So that's point number 1. And always remember, it's not who's right, but what's right. The more we can separate our feelings about someone from their actions, the happier you will be. So don't try and be right. Try and do the right thing. That's so important. Number 3, we have the saying that early to rise and early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and dead. Why they say a man, I don't know. But anyway, so hard work is important. It's very important. But so is having some fun. So have some balance. The idea is not to be the richest person in the cemetery, because I don't know if you know it, but the suits they put you in when you get put in a coffin don't have pockets in them, because there are no need for pockets. You can't take it with you. So have fun along the way. And to your points, have gratitude. express your pleasure that you have with your family. Let your kids know how much you love them. Not once a year, every day of the year. And then, point number 4 is be the change you want to see in the world. Don't just sit there and complain about what's wrong in the world. Don't just point out what could be done to make it better. Do what makes it better. And that might be a shining example that has other people say, you know what? If he can do it, so can I. And you'll start a movement. When you start to look for different things, you'll see different things. It's why we travel. We don't travel to explore new places. We travel to look at our own home in a new light. It's a very important thing. And the other one is moderation. But the way I like to put it, I think I'm echoing Oscar Wilde here. He said everything in moderation, including moderation. So if there's something that gives you great pleasure, go out there and do it. And one of my favorite authors is Roald Dahl, and he wrote a novel called My Uncle Oswald. And he was a bit of a hoot. But Uncle Oswald is quoted as making 2 points about making money, Hilda, which I think are very, very relevant. He said the first point is that when it comes to making money, the first point is that you've got to love what you do. You've got to enjoy it tremendously. And secondly, he said, you've got to give a lot of pleasure to those from whom you extract the loot. And it's a funny turn of phrase maybe, but if you can do something and you give pleasure to those who are paying you handsomely for it, and you're enjoying receiving what you're being paid to do what they want, that's a great combination. And many transactions, unfortunately, are one-sided. Well, I don't like paying the plumber this. I think it's a rip-off price, but I need to have the leak stopped. That's the wrong motivation. When you can do something where both parties really get a lot of pleasure from it, that's kind of fun. So anyway, that's sort of 5 points that will make your life such that when you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to get out of bed and do good and appreciate what you've got and help other people get where they want to be. And when you put your head down on your pillow, you can say, wow, today was a blast, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow. And on that note, and I'll finish with that, Hilda, if you put your head down on your pillow at night and you can't say, wow, today was a blast, you're doing something wrong. Change what you're doing, even if it takes you 6 months to make that change. Change what you're doing. Life's too short. We don't know what's going to happen when it's over. So make the most of what we've got while we've got it.
I cannot agree with you more, and I think, and probably more women would live longer with discomfort or unhappiness and be too scared to make a change or a decision. And the biggest thing very often is just the action of making a decision that moves you forward, and you move into the right step of happiness. And you just take one step and one step and one step, and that's how you move out of where you are. So life is definitely too short not to make the best of it. I just want to, thanks, Dolf. Are you finished with your 5 tips?
Absolutely, yes, thank you.
I want to summarize what this slide I've showed in one of my previous webinars, where I believe every person should be able to create their best life. And your best life sits right in the middle of how you create your wealth, how you manage your wealth, and the structures you create. For most people, none of those circles are talking to each other, and it's all in isolation. And I believe your team needs to understand what is your definition of your best life, and then they should create that for you. Not how much money do I have to live the life I want. It should be what life do I want to live, and then you set out and create that life, and that will then depend how you're going to create your money, how you're going to keep your money or invest your money, and in what structures do you need to have that in. And so for me, remember these 3 circles. Get your team. Your team will be your advisors, your accountants, your whoever, your wealth managers. They should sit together and understand your best life picture, and their job is to create that for you. And I'm quite passionate about this. I've done it. I think I live an amazing life because my team sit together and they understand what I want to achieve, and they make it happen for me. But without everybody working together or understanding it, or even you understanding it, this can't happen. So my passion and my drive is, I would love that people can learn from this and more people can create their best lives. And it doesn't matter if it's different than mine or different than Dolph's, or it's your best life. And it is within everyone's means to create that for them. I'm going to run the last poll here quickly before for the last couple of seconds, and then if there's any more questions, please ask the questions to us. But so if you guys, I hope everybody enjoyed the webinars over the last couple of weeks. Thank you so much, Dolf. It was amazing to have you on and your perspective on women and men and how we do it. And I definitely think we're going to see you very soon. I'm not sure if it's going to be early before the end of the year, but definitely early next year, to be able to share more with women. And then we need to move on and have happy September, happy spring. I think, guys, you guys in America, Dolph's going into autumn, so I don't know if you can say happy autumn, but yeah, thank you very much for your time, Dolf, and it was great seeing you.
Well, it's been a real thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much. And autumn's always happy here. We don't have seasons. We have hot and extremely hot. So winter and autumn don't really exist.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone, for joining us, and thanks for the great questions and participation. And we hope to do this again soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.